this is Dave from the Wizard's Keep in Muncie, Indiana, and today I want to count down my top 10 most anticipated games of 2021. Now, I'll try to give you some details about these games, but since they haven't come out yet, I haven't had a chance to play them. But I'll at least explain what it is about these games that I've heard and that appeal to me and have me kind of interested or intrigued. My number 10 most anticipated game is a game called XMen Mutant Insurrection from Fantasy Flight Games. Now, an XMen Mutant Insurrection is kind of based off of another Fantasy Flight Games called Elder Sign, which is a cooperative dice rolling Lovecraftian Cthulhu game. In X-Men Mutant Insurrection, each player is going to be playing a different X-Men, and you're working together, rolling dice to achieve different missions against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. You're going to roll those dice, decide which ones you want to keep, which ones you want to re-roll in a very Yahtzee style to fulfill the different missions that you're trying to achieve, and you get different rewards based on those missions. I liked the Elder Sign quite a bit. It was kind of a nice, light dice chucking game, so I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out in X-Men Mutant Insurrection. My number 9 most anticipated game is a game called Lost Ruins of Arnac by CGE Games. And Lost Ruins of Arnac is a Indiana Jones themed deck building worker placement game where you're playing different archaeologists kind of trying to collect different artifacts before other rival archaeologists can acquire those artifacts. I like deck building games and I like worker placement games. They're two of my favorite mechanics, so I'm kind of interested to see how those two mechanics blend together in this game. And that's the main reason I'm kind of interested in checking out Lost Ruins of Arnac. Number 8 on my list is kind of a streamlined or quicker version of another one of my favorite games, Terraforming Mars, and that is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. I don't know a lot about this one other than it is meant to be kind of a streamlined version, kind of a quicker, smaller version of the big box of the main Terraforming Mars. And the other thing about this one is kind of a shout out to former Muncie native or Ball State alum Nick Little, who is a designer on this game. So I'm kind of interested to check out the game just because I like Terraforming Mars, and two, to kind of support a local game designer. And that's why I'm interested in checking out Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. My number 7 most anticipated game is from Renegade Games, and that's called Vampire the Masquerade Rivals. Now, Vampire the Masquerade Rivals is a card game based off the old classic role-playing game Vampire the Masquerade that I used to play a lot back in the 90s. And that's why I'm kind of interested in checking out this game. I don't know much about the mechanics of this other than it's kind of a living card game style. And what that means is it's sort of like it's a customizable, non-collectible card game. Meaning that in a collectible card game like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're kind of collecting cards that you can, and trading with other players that you take and kind of customize and build your deck. Well, there's no rare cards in a living card game style. So you don't have to chase down rares. You're not buying booster packs. You get everything in the box that when you purchase the game, but you still get to customize your deck as you see or as you would like. And in Vampire the Masquerade Rivals, you're going to be playing the different clans of the Vampire the Masquerade, and each clan has its own kind of theme. And so I'm kind of interested to see how that works, because I like those living card games. I'm a big fan of like Magic the Gathering, and also, as I said, a fan of the Vampire the Masquerade setting. So I'm kind of interested to see how that works in a card game. My number 6 most anticipated game is a game from Renegade Games called Now or Never. Now or Never is I guess the third of a trilogy of a series of games. It started off with Above and Below, then came after that Near and Far, and now to complete the trilogy is Now or Never. Now, Above and Below is one of my favorite board games. It's kind of like a worker placement game, kind of married with a storytelling game. And how that works is you're going to place workers or have workers do different actions, and one of those actions is clearing out caverns in Above and Below. When you clear out a cavern, you or explore a cavern, you get another player at the table is going to read kind of a section from a storybook, going to give you kind of a couple choices, sort of like a choose your own adventure, and then you use your workers to see if you can succeed at the choices you made, and then what happens, or the person reading the story will then read further what happens based on the choices, or if you're successful or unsuccessful at your decisions. In Above and Below, it was mostly, like I said, a worker placement game. I really liked the game mechanics of the game, and the storytelling aspect was kind of like this little cherry that was kind of thrown on top. It wasn't necessary for the game, but it was a nice little extra bonus, and I kind of liked the different stories that you would generate in the game. In Above and Below, each of those stories were kind of just kind of one-offs, though. You would kind of clear out a cavern, you would read the story, make your choices, and then the next time you clear out a different cavern, you would read a different story, have a different set of choices, and they weren't really connected in any way. Then that's what in Near and Far, Ryan Lockett, the game designer, did was he kind of modified the storytelling aspect, where Near and Far became a campaign game where different choices you made or different stories you encountered earlier in the game or in earlier games could have effect or benefits in later stories that you kind of came across. So it really improved the storytelling system of Above and Below. But though I was kind of in the minority, because Near and Far was a very, very popular game and a big success for Red Raven Games, I wasn't a huge fan of the gameplay of Near and Far. It was kind of felt like a mediocre game with an amazing storytelling system attached to it. So I don't know anything about Now or Never. It's only just been announced that it's going to be the third of that series. But I really, really liked Above and Below. I really, really liked the storytelling system of Near and Far. So I'm kind of curious to see how that works in Now or Never. My number 5 most anticipated game is probably number 1 on a lot of people's lists, and that is Frosthaven. Now, Frosthaven is a standalone sequel to the popular Gloomhaven cooperative dungeon crawl game, and so in Frosthaven, it should be very, very similar to Gloomhaven, just kind of in a different setting, which that in itself is enough to kind of sell this game, or why I want to check it out, because Gloomhaven was a really, really solid dungeon crawl game. I'm a big fan of role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, and so as a result, I want to check out and see what Frosthaven has to offer, just go on more adventures in the kind of Gloomhaven universe. Number 4 on my list is a game by a smaller company, or a new company I'm not really familiar with, and that company is Road to Infamy Games, and that game is called Canvas. Canvas uses these kind of transparent or translucent cards. It kind of reminds me of a different game called Mystic Vale. Mystic Vale was kind of a deck building game where you use these translucent cards, and you'd have a card with a card sleeve. You take these translucent cards, slide them into the sleeve to add different attributes to the different cards. So it was called a card crafting game instead of deck building game, because in deck building games you're adding more and more cards to your deck. In Mystic Vale you'd always have the same number of cards, but you would be changing the aspect of these cards by the card crafting. Now, Canvas isn't a deck building game. It doesn't use card crafting in that way, but it does use these translucent cards like you have in Mystic Vale. Except in Canvas, you're making different paintings, and the different translucent cards have different elements on those cards that you kind of overlay. So when you take the card and slide it into the sleeve, it's going to add different pictures or different aspects of a picture to the painting, and also each card has different traits on there. So when you're kind of constructing your painting, you're trying to add different traits to that painting to score different points. And the art on the cards looks really, really good, and I like games that have really good art, which is why I like some of those Red Raven games I was talking about, the Above and Below, and Near and Far. And so just that alone, I'm kind of interested to see how you can create a game around this, kind of creating these awesome looking paintings or these awesome looking pictures. And that's why I'm interested in checking out Canvas. Number 3 on my list is by one of my favorite board game designers, Uwe Rosenberg. As you can kind of see back here on the wall behind me, I have a lot of Uwe Rosenberg games. So he's kind of one of my favorite designers, and what he's kind of known for are either these kind of polyomino games where you take these different Tetris-shaped pieces and kind of place them together on a board, or his other games he's known for are these kind of farming simulation worker placement games. And the game that's number 3 on my list is called New York Zoo, which kind of takes a couple of those aspects and puts them together. In New York Zoo, you're going to be taking these different polyomino shaped pieces, kind of place them in your zoo or on your kind of game board, which is supposed to represent your zoo. And the different polyomino pieces kind of represent these different animal enclosures that you have to place around your zoo. And in addition to that, you're also going to be placing animals in the polyomino pieces. And as you fill those pieces with animals by either acquiring new animals or breeding the animals, which is another popular Uwe Rosenberg mechanic, you're going to fill those polyomino pieces, and once you fill a piece, you're going to score that tile, and that usually gives you another bonus piece that you can use. That's like concession stands or roller coasters or different other things you can add to your zoo, and to fill it out. Whoever fills their zoo up first is going to be the winner of the game. And like I said, Uwe Rosenberg is one of my favorite designers. Whenever he makes a game, I'm always going to check it out, and that's why I'm interested in checking out New York Zoo. Number 2 on my list is a game from Stonemaier Games called Red Rising. Now, kind of similar to what I was talking about with New York Zoo, where whenever Uwe Rosenberg comes out with the game, I'm always going to check it out. I'm also always going to check out a game by Stonemaier Games as well. And that's mostly just because they've got a history of putting out great games. They're the makers of Scythe, Wingspan, Viticulture. So they've got a really good track record. So if they come out with a game, I'm going to at least check it out. And that's why one of the reasons I'm interested in checking out Red Rising. Red Rising is a kind of a card hand management game where different cards are going to be worth victory points. They're worth victory points themselves, plus they've got traits on the cards. That means they're going to be worth bonus victory points in relation to or corresponding with other cards that you have in your hand. Also, the cards have different abilities on them when you play them. So I really like this concept, or like this idea of these choices you have to make. What cards are you going to go after to put in your hand so you score the victory points? But also, maybe a card has a really good mechanic or a really good ability, and you're like, oh, I really want this card in my hand for the victory points. But I also may want to play the card for its ability, so you have that kind of tough decision of what you want to do. Plus, when you play the card, it kind of goes out and you play it in different locations on the main game board, and based on the location you play it on, you're also going to trigger different abilities. So you have to decide what cards you want to play, where you want to play them. In addition to that, those cards are kind of laid out on the board, and other players will be able to pick those cards up. So you also got to be careful which cards you play, because you're also feeding those cards to your opponent. Or maybe you can kind of gamble, but you're like, oh, I really like this card, but I really like the effect of it. I'm going to play it and hope that maybe no one else picks it up, and I can pick it up later. So I really like the decisions that you're kind of going to be making in this game, and that's why I'm interested in checking out Red Rising. My number 1 most anticipated game, I already kind of touched on the concept of the Red Raven games, storytelling games, and this is another Red Raven storytelling game called Sleeping Gods. Sleeping Gods is a cooperative campaign game, and as I talked about with my number 6th game, that near and far was a little bit of a disappointment to me. I think one of the things that was a disappointment is it's a competitive campaign storytelling game, and I'm not a giant fan of campaign or competitive campaign games, and that's just because one, I think maybe I like the cooperative experience in a campaign. It's sort of like a D&D game where everybody's getting together for a shared experience. But also in competitive games, or competitive campaign games, you can have situations where maybe someone gets into a big lead, so the other players are not necessarily as interested, or they continue playing. Maybe they'll play, but they've kind of checked out. so it's not as fun of an experience, or maybe you have a hard time playing the future parts of the campaign because somebody's far behind and they're just not interested in playing anymore. So this is a cooperative campaign game, so it's already a big plus. But as I said also about Near and Far, I wasn't a huge fan of the mechanics of the game. But Sleeping God takes that campaign storytelling aspect that was perfected in Near and Far and adds it to a very good cooperative campaign game that I'm kind of intrigued to check out the mechanics of Sleeping Gods. Everyone's kind of on a boat together, or a ship, and you're kind of somehow transported to this strange world with all these sleeping gods, or these powerful sleeping deities that I believe you're trying to awaken in some way. And the board is just kind of this booklet or map with different islands that you're kind of sailing around. And if you sail off the edge of the board, you turn to another page. And so it's also, I guess, very open-ended, where you kind of choose as a group where you want to travel, where you want to explore to. So I'm very, very interested in checking out Sleeping Gods. Well, these are my top 10 most anticipated games of 2021. I hope that maybe you heard about a game that you were interested in this list. If you have any questions about these games or any other games, feel free to comment on YouTube or on Facebook, or come visit me at the Wizard's Keep. Until next time, thank you for watching.